Welcome, everyone. This is a fan art panel that definitely has a name. Panel. See, I haven't prepared for moderating either. What's the name of the panel, Tommy? Fan art now and then. I'm your moderator, and the reason I'm your moderator is that everyone else on this panel has done a lot of preparation because they are fundamentally good people, and I am fundamentally not a good person and have not done any preparation. But I did your badges, so you know. Right, my name's Alison Scott, for those of you who don't know me. I am a fan artist, and if this were an EasterCon, I'd be going, I am nominated for the Fan Artist Hugo for 2025 for reasons, and you should listen to the podcast and buy my book. I don't have a book, but I'll be saying that anyway. I'd like my other panelists to introduce themselves.
Hi there, I'm Rob Hansen, and I've been working in fanzines for like 50 years. No, sorry, 49 years. And I used to be a fan artist.
I'm David Hicks. I've been around for 45 years. I have little prolific phases and then I drop out periodically. I've done some stuff for this convention in the Fanthology and John Harden's card at the back. I wasn't sure I still had my mojo till people started twisting my arm because it's a long time since I've drawn stuff. But now I am more confident I can still do work. Yes, I will do something for you, Alison.
That would be lovely. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sue Mason. I started doing fan art when I joined fandom in 1982. But most of it at the first was for convention publications, because they discovered that having a pet artist really helpful. My first meeting with Alison, I was sitting under the table because there wasn't enough rooms at the table. And I think they thought I was Geetha's retarded friend because I was sitting under the table. And then I came out with the logo for the convention and the theme of the con, and plonked it on the table in front of them, and lo and behold, they have their convention. You know what I mean? So yeah, never disrespect your artists.
Would I
Yes.
ever? Okay. Can we have that with a moose, please?
Yes.
So yes, no. Here is the first question, and Dave's prepared a lot. So when I said I hadn't done any preparation, Dave has even prepped a pile of moderation questions, which is very,
And
very
Alison has stolen them,
which I have just
shamelessly
nicked.
Bloodless coup.
And the first, what he said was, would you like to moderate? And I said, that would be fine. The very first question, I'm going to start with Sue, is what constitutes good fan art?
It's a daft question. Art is so subjective. My theory with art is it does not matter one fig whether it's good or not. If you enjoy doing it, it's art. My caveat with fan art is it's not always, but it's sometimes you're given a brief, and I think you should try to fulfill the brief, even if you should do it in your style and with your flair, but you give the editor what they did ask for, rather than what was it? Dad used a sword rather than a machine gun or something. Yeah, you try and give the editor. It's rather more collaborative than working as an artist on your own. You can just do fillos and just hand them out, and that's brilliant because that's your art and you're just handing it out, and it's great because it gets fillos out there. And then there are commissioned covers and fillos where you're working with somebody else and the fanzine team or the convention team to do something together. So they're slightly different, both are equally valuable. So good is completely irrelevant with art. Useful fan art means that it can be reproduced because you've not done a full watercolor for a black and white fanzine that's going to be mimeographed. Do you know what I mean? That might be a beautiful piece of full color artwork, but if you can't reproduce it, that's your issue. Right, Dave, your problem.
Okay, I mean, for me, fan art, as indeed fan writing, things fan produce, is stuff that you get that you only see in the fanish context. You only see it in fanzines or convention publications, which Sue has mentioned, and I think is an under-regarded area of a lot of artists' work. It might be similar in style, technique, composition to work you'll see elsewhere in culture, but there's something about it that means it can only appear in a fanzine. we'll come up and talk about some of the makers in a little while. But we come to fanzines, we come to fan culture because it's giving us something that we're not getting elsewhere, and it's very difficult to nail down exactly what it is. But it isn't all of that out there. It is its own. It is its own thing, and whether it's an old D West Electro stencil in a dog-eared copy of True Rat, or in contemporary times, whether it is stuff that is produced to parody board games like the Cluedo board, for the convention version that Alison produced.
I've done Cluedo twice.
It's actually quite a few years ago now, isn't it? As well, but it's very good. But it's the stuff you don't see anywhere else that is
The
part of
jokes,
us.
It's the in jokes as well.
Oh God, yes. I love my in jokes.
Yeah.
Doing fanzine covers, Sue was talking about a brief, and I always preferred it when I was told by the fanzine editor what they wanted.
Mm.
I always hated it when I say, all right, what would you like me to draw? And they go, oh,
Anything.
whatever you want. And
Yeah.
that was like the worst thing they could
Yeah.
go, that doesn't mean anything. You know, I could end up drawing something that you didn't like, or it was wrong for whatever reason. But very
Sometimes
often,
it's just a theme. It doesn't actually have to be really specific, does it? It just,
not particularly, no.
you know, the theme of this fanzine is going to be.
Right. Lots of fanzines have their own personality as well, which again, if you're familiar with them, you try and plug into it, you know. So, yeah, that makes a big difference as well. The specificity of fan art, what Dave was saying, I'm not entirely sure I agree with that, because cartooning is cartooning. On the assumption you do cartooning as opposed to fine illustration. But you certainly need to pay a lot of attention to how it's going to be reproduced, because you can come a real, or rather in the old days, certainly of duplicated, you could come a real cropper if you got that wrong. You know, very, very fine line work ain't going to work on a stencil, generally speaking.
Guilty.
Yeah. You know, that's why what always worked best on stencils was just basically line work, just line drawings. You don't want a lot of shading. You don't ideally want a lot of black areas, even particularly on duplicators, because black areas were a pain in the bum when it came to duplicating stuff, because they'd always fade out and gray and what have you. If it's litho, fine, but you know, you really need to fit your medium.
And it costs money as well. You know what I mean? It was like, it takes more toner when you were photocopying if it was really complicated and a lot of black areas on it. And you don't think of it, but you have to. You know,
Proctor used to spend some considerable time working out how we could do the most effective layout possible at the least saturation possible. And there's a number of covers that you can point to and go, yeah, no, we actually deliberately took the color down a lot in these. And when we were commissioning art, we'd also say, could you do this in a way that's not going to require all of the ink to print, because we were printing ourselves. It's a long time ago now. Oh, it makes me feel old. I do want to answer this one myself, though, because one of the things about best fan artists, and this is one of these things that has to stay in this room and obviously on the Zoom and preserved for all time, but you know what I mean. One of the things about the best fan artist, Hugo, is that most years there are a number of people on the shortlist who, to my mind, aren't doing something that I think of as fan art, but the world thinks of as fan art, because what it is people drawing pretty pictures of their favorite science fiction and fantasy characters. And I just don't think that's what I want to talk about. It's not the artistic conversation I want to be part of. I am interested in art that is illuminating other things that have fandom about them. And that doesn't mean that you couldn't have some pictures that are in that style in your fanzine, and that would be fine. But I feel that most of those people aren't actually doing anything in the fanish community apart from sort of appearing on the Hugo ballot. The interestingest thing is this year I can say this because this year we have 6 fan artists who do fan work in fandom on the Hugo ballot, and I don't know how that's happened, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You know,
and it's no disrespect to the artists, because some of them
the art's
are
beautiful.
effing fantastic artists in their own right, you know, and they are fans that this is why it's hard to argue with. They are fans that make art not for profit, for the joy of sharing it with other people, often fans. And I have no problem with that. That makes them a fan artist, but the definition that we have is slightly different in that, and due to the history of what we've been, there's a history that doesn't reflect, you know, to me. And there's always been fan artists out there who have been doing their own thing off, you know, in their own ghetto of fandom, wherever it was, and producing fantastic art. But we're being quite specific about a certain sort of fan art.
That's in dialogue with the rest of the Fanish community.
Our Fanish community.
Our Fanish community mostly. It doesn't even need to be our Fanish community, because I think you've just
Yeah,
shown me a
the
picture that
Trek
you're probably
ones.
going to show around.
Yeah.
That is clearly in
Yeah.
Star Trek fandom, but is clearly a piece of fan art.
Yeah. I was looking for female fan artists, and a lot of those were in the media fandom. That was where I got onto that one.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So the next question is actually saying, so when we are thinking of the first part of this is fan art old and new. So you've all done some great work pulling up work by old fan artists. So Rob, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, if you're looking at old fan artists in the UK,
I feel like we've
You
got
s-
some slides. Do we? We have
Yes.
slides. Yeah, Tommy, thank
Yeah.
you.
yeah, call them up. In the early days of British fandom, unlike the early days of US fandom, we didn't have very many fan artists at all, and which means obviously we didn't have very many good ones. And I'd say that the two that particularly stand out were Harry Turner, who was doing great work right from the beginning, line work, and Arthur Williams, who did he did the cover of the Easter Con. There we are. There's right. Oh, where's the
Futurian War
We're
Digest.
not getting the whole picture. Can you?
You might have to zoom out a little bit.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's an example of Arthur Williams's art, because he's kind of he's totally forgotten these days, I think, for the most part.
That's
Exactly.
great, though.
Yeah. And there's one of his, and he also did the cover for the program book for the 1944 Eastercon, which doesn't count as an Eastercon because of the peculiarities of the numbering that we do.
What if it was at Easter and it says Eastercon on the program book? How is it not an Eastercon, Rob Hansen?
The Eastercon sequencing begins post-war. The fact that it was called Eastercon
And it was held at Easter.
Yeah, just yeah, it's not all right. But the first Eastercons in the sequence weren't actually held at Easter; they were held at Whitsun.
But what actually calls itself an Eastercon? It's
know.
clearly an Easter. Okay.
Yes, you clearly don't understand the kung fu of all this year.
I am as an egg. Yeah.
So yeah, that's
So that's Arthur Williams.
that's another
isn't it?
example of Arthur Williams,
Yeah.
and he did quite a few for Futurian War Digest as well. Entirely in the 40s, and as I say, virtually forgotten now. Unlike Harry Turner, who went on, he kind of went away and came back a few times. He came back in the 50s, and then he went away and came back in the 70s, etc., and did some good work. And in his later years, he got really involved in all this geometric stuff. So there are a couple of books of it. he put out.
So I have a Harry Turner anecdote, which some of you may have already heard, which is that when I got into fanzines, people started sending me fanzines with Harry Turner art on it. In particular, Banana Wings was printing Harry Turner, and I was like, oh, this is great stuff. But I remember an artist from my childhood when I wasn't in science fiction at all, who was doing all this stuff, doing this art in this style, and wrote a book about it, which I have. Turns out that was Harry Turner. It's Dover. It's you can still get it from Dover, and it's a little book about if you're interested in geometric art construction, it's a book about how to construct this sort of thing. And there's two versions of it, one of which is just a colouring book, but one of which is a colouring book. With a ton
Dover
of
were
construction notes.
fantastic.
That's
I
right, you
worked
did
in
it.
crafts, and Dover were copyright-free images that my little old ladies could copy and trace and photocopy. And they did everything from cutesy animals to realistic animals to flowers to geometric art to Celtic knotwork. And before the internet, they were lifesavers. Were they an American company or a British company or both? Because I think they're American.
Yeah.
It's the first
I think
company with a
they
British
were
art.
very easily available in the UK. The art shops had them. You went into art shops and went, we're doing marine mammals.
Right.
Have
But
any of
Yeah.
us done a fandom colouring book?
No, but I've done fandom colouring sheets for several World Cons and Easter Cons of mermaids and dragons and stuff like that. I've done quite a few.
I thought you did a colouring book that was kind of fanish adjacent, that had quite a lot of fan art
Oh,
in it.
yes, it was for
Yeah, for a
disaster
charity.
relief for
Yeah.
flooded Lake District.
Yes.
Dan Stefan at least once did a professional coloring book, and it was based on the Batman cartoon, and he managed to mimic the style perfectly.
Cool.
So that was one of the professional jobs that he did.
Yeah.
I'm just seeing the Corfu colouring book is going to be sort of number 1, light grey, number 2, mid grey, number 3, dark grey.
Right.
Yeah, I have done colouring sheets for children's zones at conventions, and they're easy as pie, and people like them, and kids like them, and kids of all ages like them.
Yeah.
So it is. So returning to Dover and colouring books and Harry Turner. So Harry Turner is actually one of my totem hero artists, not merely a fan artist, but just plain artist, right up there with Escher.
Yep.
The work
yeah,
amazing.
clearly he
With
was-
whom, of course, he was in correspondence.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, he went on to be a pro artist. Yeah. Moving into the 1950s, talking about early fan artists, somebody you don't tend to think of, James White. He did a lot of lino cuts that we used as the cover of Slant. So and they're very, very well done as well. So again, Bob Shaw did some art as well. But there we are. There's James.
I know,
There's James White. All lino cuts.
but lino cuts are like that. It's very hard to be delicate.
And then
Well, one of the slant covers is the best fanzine cover of all time. So I don't know if you've got it.
no, I just pulled that
Oh,
one.
no, hang on.
Which one are you thinking of?
The one with multicolour. Hang on.
Oh, the one in colour.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But again, the black and white stuff, when it came to litho, and we come to Operation Fantast, because he was doing it litho, he was able to do some fairly solid, print some fairly solid artwork. One of the pieces he printed was by an artist called Fred Robinson, who you tend to think of more as a writer. But as far as I can tell, I'm sure Miss Harry Bell or somebody else who knows the techniques better, it looks to me like it was done as a scratch. There we are. Isn't that a scratch board or
It
not?
could be. Oh, it could be lino.
Because that seems a bit too fine for lino.
Fluid for
So I think scratch board.
lino.
That look right?
I've corrected you about this in the past. That's not Fred Robinson, that's Peter Ridley.
Is it
Yeah, that's his English before.
Peter J. Ridley?
Peter Ridley.
Because I originally started off with that, and it was then corrected to Fred Robinson after that.
I saw you as Fred Robinson and I corrected you on it.
It's a nice piece of art, though.
Anyway,
It's
I am going to go back and say, can you find me the cover of Slant 4, Tommy? I've got it here, but it's only at that
Scratch art
size.
is really nice. You basically put a layer of chalk down on card and then paint over it with India ink.
I actually have that. Yeah.
And you can buy commercial, but
Yeah,
you
I
can
can see
make it
what-
yourself. It's very
Yep.
easy.
It's
And
not-
then you scratch it off with a stylus. And I would not be surprised if that was scratch art, because you can sort of get a fineness and a curve that's really hard to do with lino cutting. You know, you can do really delicate stuff with. I started doing scratch art as a kid when I was about 10.
Mm.
And my granddad taught me how to make the because it was expensive to buy. But yeah, layer of chalk covered in India ink, and then you scratch off the India ink to give you that, and that quite has the feel of it, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
On the original. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
In the UK, I think the UK we call it scraperboard, but scratchboard, scraperboard. You get coloured and all sorts. You play around. It's very good stuff. Great fun. Sorry, I like techniques. I used to teach little old ladies how to do all these sort of things.
Yes, and don't forget the other major achievement of successfully producing a piece of lino cut is to still have all of your
Your
fingers
fingers,
at the
yes,
end of
yes.
it, because you have to use very, very sharp
Yeah,
tools
highly dangerous. And
and with something that is resistant. So
Yeah,
you have
so
to
you
push harder,
hard.
hold it.
Yeah.
I've just put my 2024 pumpkin into my Hugo Voter packet submission. So, you know, the point is you use lino cutting tools to carve
Yeah.
pumpkins with.
Yeah.
And no, if you carry on through the images, Tommy. Right now, here, the great Harry Bell, who's in the audience with us. who isn't as well known for his fan art these days as he should be, because he was.
Well, he doesn't do enough
he's
of it.
brilliant.
Please send us a cover for Octothorpe. Please send us a cover for Octothorpe. There you go.
I mean, that's one of the two here. Go to the other one as well, Tommy. No, that's Jim Burke. No. No, really? I thought I put another one up there. Okay, obviously, I'm wrong. I thought there was another one. All right.
What's the?
No, right, okay. I thought I gave you a link to another one. But okay. Okay, go back to Jim Barker now, because he's another contemporary of Harry and me.
Yeah.
And there's one of his covers there, which is him and it's him and Langford when they were standing for TAF.
Yeah.
The only time that two people who'd been investigated by the police for explosives offences stood for a fan of work.
Really?
Yeah. Sorry, what?
What?
They were-
Really?
seriously.
No. That's not the bit I'm wondering.
What?
Because
Is that the only time?
yeah, lots of fans.
Oh.
Lots of fans have run-ins for the.
I
police
definitely
for
Dermot's
explosives.
ever run, so
Yeah.
Yeah. For explosives offences, but yeah.
Excellent cartoonist, absolutely.
Yeah.
The cleanness of his lines, just
Yes.
Hazel Langford in the background with the nerves.
Yeah, with knitting.
spent much of her life with that look on her face.
So yeah, some early again, those are just some early examples I called up. We could have called up Jim Cawthorne as well.
Mhm.
Bill Harry, though, although he went on to great fame later as a buddy of the Beatles, a lot of his stuff was actually copying photographs. So there you go. Ah, you found it, didn't you?
No, it's number 4 that's my favourite. That
Okay.
I think is just
Anyway.
amazingly well put together. Sorry. I mean,
And we take it all for granted now, colour reproduction and all this,
Yeah.
you know. And we're not, it's not that long ago when it was just an impossible dream.
Exactly. That was very, very hard.
You know, it was just, when we first started the lottery in the UK, I said I wanted to win because I wanted a canal boat and a photocopier. And they all laughed and said, "Yeah, you can't fit a photocopier on a canal boat." But the big thing was I wanted a copying device that, you know, because there were no scanners, there was no home printers, there was, you know what I mean? It was just, now it was because my stuff was porn and I couldn't take it to the copy shop because it was too rude. But that's beside the point. You know, we are absolutely spoiled now by how good the reproduction is that you can make in your lounge. You know.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, Sue's TAF report we didn't even bother taking it to a copy shop. I just printed it out on my home. I mean, it is a good printer, but still, you know.
It makes the old stuff even more impressive because they just did not. have
I
any
just
of
set
this.
the printer to fanzine and say, please do me 20, 100 collated copies. As long as I keep feeding in paper, it'll keep doing it.
Right.
If I could, soon we're going to be able to get them to write and illustrate them as well. Soon, never been easy. to
What
find
would be the
illustrations.
point?
Alison would be in the bar more.
Is it
It's
possible?
a standard art school technique is actually to make you use limited materials, limited palettes, only draw with certain things, certain colours, no colours, black and white, only do line or only do blocks and no lines and what have you. Certainly my offspring has been through a ton of this. She had a sketchbook filled with lines, basically just like circles.
Mhm.
And that was the
everything.
old school way you were taught art.
No, this was last year.
No, I mean, and it's now come back is what I mean.
Yeah.
But again, this makes the original old stuff even more impressive because some of these people were artists in their own right. And, you know, I think of D West, some of D West, he's one that impressed because D does the humour and the incredibly intricate.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And some of these people, but there are other artists out there who weren't artists who only did it for the love of doing vanish drawing. The way there are different calibers of writers from the, you know, and nobody should be this is what I meant about right or good art. It doesn't matter if it's shit art. If they've enjoyed doing it and done a joke with a good punchline that people are going to smile at, it doesn't matter if it's stick figures. Do you know what I mean? It's not just how good. It's good is a wrong term.
stick figures, and they were incredibly popular, and rightly so.
Because it wasn't just the stick figures that was the point, you know, it was the
Now, Sue, you mentioned Jim Barker's ability as a cartoonist and caricaturist, and his figures are very resonant. And I think people will probably say that one of your great virtues is that you do lovely caricatures of fans. That
yes,
make,
because I make them look tall and thin,
well, not always, but you make them look.
taller and thinner.
You made me look spherical at least twice.
Yeah, but that was the punchline.
Yeah, okay.
And you were pregnant at the time.
Yeah, I think one of them said, "I'm not pregnant, I'm fat."
Oh yeah, maybe. You do that to your friends.
But
don't you?
but the thing is that in general, you do very recognizable Spanish caricatures. D. West also did very recognizable Spanish characters. And the fascinating thing is that if you look at art he did 30 or 40 years ago, and then you look at the people now, they've grown into their D. West personas, which is sad, but
Terrifying.
very true. You know?
Yeah. D. West felt no need to be flattering
Kind.
at all.
Oh.
He'd look at your bad posture. He'd look at your paunch. He'd look at your slumping shoulders. He'd go with it,
Yeah.
with it completely. Because there's a fanthology in the back that captures a couple of things. There was an Easter con where he turned up for the first time in years, and he was going around looking at the people saying, "I can draw you now."
Oh God, I remember that.
Yes. It's the one I showed you earlier where you're telling him to fuck off.
Yeah.
But no, it was one of the Hinckley.
How was it? Right.
Possibly the last one of the
Right.
Hinckley conventions. But so I then did, I think it's for a fanzine Lillian put out a while back there, him and me sitting on the couch and him saying this, "I can draw you now." And I turned around and said, "Of course, readers, you realize this means war." Which is when, and going back to parodying things like colouring books and what have you, I then did the Bunty style Dress D. West,
Oh yes.
which is out there at the embassy ball, killing the fuckers,
Yeah.
at the disco, whatever, because we do tend to have a bit of fun with each other from time to time. But it's interesting. He was the one who used to go up to people like us and say, "You can be a bit more serious, you know. You really need to go deeper into this." And he was very, very serious about what he did, even if he was being light-hearted. He was very committed to the work.
Shrinking
Can
ducks.
I mention my favourite example of the West ripping off each other? Yvonne Rouse had written a piece about how she had to look after some baby ducks by the West. But Yvonne, when we got it down a bit, to fit the size of the page, he got very cross about that. You're not meant to sort of change the size of the teeth on. But then you came along and did the next issue for them as a cover. Yvonne Rouse is the duck shrinker.
Shrinking ducks became a fan art.
Well, I mean, so Proctor, who we were never very respectful of our letter writers and artists because we just
And staff.
have stuff. We were a cabal, we're a collective
Serfs.
organisation. But so basically, the fanzine was very small, and as a result of the fanzine being very small, stuff got cut extremely brutally all the time, and that included shrinking everybody's ducks, really.
But the line would be, "Oh God, we're going to shrink so-and-so's ducks. Do you think they'll kill us?" You know, on more than one occasion. But it became beyond just fan art because it would be letters as well.
The letters got
You know,
hacked viciously.
You know, you just had to.
The counterexample on that is Bill Wadsworth, who wanted you to shrink them down. You were supposed to shrink them down, and for God's sakes, never enlarge them.
I deliberately drew quite a lot of things larger, so that when they compressed, the line the lines would be darker, tighter. It would all look crisper because it's easier to do
We have
this.
a
than
question
this.
from the committee member in the audience. Okay, so I will repeat that for the benefit of the Zoom. Claire has asked people to wait for the mics before before audience answering. Perfectly reasonable. I have totally forgotten what Jerry and Sandra said. So Yeah.
Sandra was talking about the time Yvonne Rouse. I'll throw in an extra Yvonne Rouse anecdote about something else I drew, which goes back to editors giving you a brief. But Yvonne, in order for space considerations, shrank a drawing by D. West of some cute little ducks, just cute little ducks.
Cute little ducks that have been down her
yes,
cleavage.
he
They were
was-
traumatized.
I never. That's not the word I'd have used. Yes, I have no first-hand knowledge of what he said, but the story goes he was apoplectic about having his artwork shrunk by an impertinent editor. So I followed up for her next issue with Yvonne in full evil supervillain costume with a lot of tight leather. I actually drew Yvonne in a lot of tight leather more times than was strictly necessary. Entitled By Day, she was an ordinary fanzine fan, and by night she was the Duck Shrinker, TM, zapping these little ducks. I'll just follow up briefly because we mentioned editors giving you briefs. And Yvonne did give me a very specific brief once. I was about her working life. So walking towards a sewage farm, because she used to work in environmental safety and auditing and everything with and a list of the PPE she was supposed to be wearing, the high vis, the hard hat, the boots, or anything. And what I had as she's walking away with her back and backside towards us is, if I'm going to be that specific, next time I must include trousers. Yeah, that's that one.
mhm.
He's crossing off his anecdotes as he goes. You know.
Right. Sorry. Do you have any other famous ones on your list, Rob?
No, well, I was going to bring up Margaret Wellbank, who I think was early 80s. And she came on the scene and had a very distinctive style, but it was a very distinctive style we recognized. We all thought, this woman has been influenced by Edward Gorey.
Britain is
And
fine in 79, I'm
it-
going to say.
It turned out that she had actually was completely unfamiliar with Edward Gorey. It literally was just a pure coincidence.
Wow.
But she got very keen on him afterwards when she was introduced to him for obvious reasons.
so-
'Cause
so-
she recognized the style.
Must have been late 70s because she did the logo, the Britain is fine in 79 cartoon. No, Harry Bell did that. So it must have been, sorry. Okay, I have
She did
forgotten
87.
the past. I'm never going to be Britain's
Yes, that was
greatest
87,
living
yeah.
fan historian. It was. It's Britain is heaven in 87.
Did a long cartoon strip for Britain is Heaven is 87. Harry did 1979.
That's correct. Yes. Sorry. But yeah. So yeah, Margaret Wellbank is great. But faded away. Maybe we didn't appreciate her enough.
Yeah.
Well, no, not everybody hangs around fandom. Some people are there for a few years, then they're gone. And then there's us old farts who are still here 40, 50 years later. So, hi, guys.
Yeah, there is a dearth of female fan artists.
Yeah. So in Britain, there is
Yeah.
a dearth of female fan artists, and so I was going to mention an Argentinian one. Because Maestrelkov did the most extraordinary things with a bucket of dead sheep. I think, is that right? Cows,
Something like that. Yeah.
yeah. So she made hecto from the bones of the dead animals on her ranch, and did amazing multicolored hecto, and you don't see the like of it anymore.
No. In these vegan days, you can't do that. You have to.
But it's so much easier now. I draw on an iPad and can just send the drawings to people without having to scan. It doesn't matter how rude they are either, without having to scan them and worry about taking them to a copy shop or anything. It democratizes it as well, because there's people out there who will play with a computer who wouldn't play with pen and paper.
I just thought somebody I should have mentioned in passing. I mean, I don't think she was particularly good, but our earliest female fan artist was probably Daphne Buckmaster. She drew the cover of 1 or 2 issues of Femizine. So in actual fact, you can see them in the in the room there.
Yeah.
I was just commenting on Alison's suggestion that there aren't enough British female fan artists, when 2 of the 6 fan artists Hugo nominees this year are at least resident in Britain, even
Hispania is also British, yes.
She is British now, is
She is a British citizen,
Oh,
yeah.
excellent. But that
So-
makes her, although she is American born and bred, nevertheless she is British now.
It's
Still
complicated,
has to
but yeah.
be British.
Yeah, no, indeed. And I think that's more moving us on to our fan artist now part of the panel. Where is fan art now? With the fan art, what is going on with it?
This
I'm actually-
this is the bit.
him and me.
Go
We're
on.
kind of a bit
Yeah.
out of the current scene and the more technologically.
Given that
driven
it's
stuff.
been about 10, 15 years since I last drew something, I'm not sure, anymore. But sorry, before you go on to the new stuff, something that came up recently that I was astonished by. There was a guy called Art Saha who did lots of art, and in the 1940s he did some covers for Francis T. Laney's fanzine The Acolyte, which was devoted to H.P. Lovecraft as much as anything. One of those pieces of fan art, one of those covers, came up for auction recently and went for $25,000. So, I thought that was pretty impressive for a piece of fan art. So there you go. Anyway, back to you guys who actually know what's going on now in the fan art.
Well, I don't know if anyone on this panel really knows what's going on now, but I have observed. So one of the things about fanzine is that although we do see traditional fanzines appearing on the Hugo ballot, and of course there's fan awards, what I think we are not seeing so much of is the web fanzines aren't using what I think of as traditional fan art very much at all. They sometimes have stocks of artists like pulling from DeviantArt. We've got quite a lot of them that's using a bunch of AI art. We have some so we've obviously got things like Journey Planet is different as a fanzine. It is different every time because its editors are given so much leeway that the individual issues are hugely different. But where we're seeing new people coming into fandom and doing fanzines, a lot of those don't have the artistic, I guess they don't have kind of filler-shaped holes in the way that,
I think it's
how
partly
it's did.
because of the way things read on the internet. It's different to how they read in paper. Because anybody that's used a Kindle or anything like that knows this is, true. Reading stuff on your phone or your iPad, the art may get in the way of what you're doing. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I'm thinking about Galactic Journey uses tons of illustration, but it's all illustration, photos, other things. Very little, enormously little of it is produced for Galactic Journey. It's primarily a print zine that is illustrated with found art from the internet, rather than a fanzine that is. And I don't think, because Nerds of a Feather won the Hugo last year, I don't think they have any art at all. I think they are really just a review zine. And I think that's a shame. I mean, I don't know what we can do to kind of go, your piece of the internet would be better if it had fan art in it. But I mean, this is one of the. So Octothorpe has cover art because we're silly. Because podcasts don't obviously need cover art, but we market the fanzine by telling Mike Glare and Dave Langford about it and Bill Burns. And for all those purposes, it's quite helpful to have illustrations that people can use when they're writing about the podcast. So we have our cover art, but a podcast obviously doesn't really need cover art because it's basically audio. So most podcasts have exactly one piece of art that they just use every week. But so we've got art, but I don't know if we need it. And a lot of people don't seem to have art at all anymore. It's very sad. We have a question from Sandra.
Come back to the microphone.
And the other thing about Octothorpe is that there has been some debate over whether the art for each issue of Octothorpe counts as a fanzine cover or not for the purposes of voting in the fan awards.
I believe it straightforwardly doesn't because
Well, indeed, because
Octothorpe's been excluded for reasons of not being, I don't know, fanish enough or immutable enough or paper enough.
I mean, I personally think this is regrettable because, there is all too little fan art around that, as you've noted, and by doing that, it just excludes a large tranche of what little there is.
I think most of our artists do. I mean, I think we've, so it was just me, obviously, but I only do about half the art for Oxthorpe, and the others, Hispania always does a couple. We've had covers from Brad Foster, we've had covers from Sue, of course, we've had covers from Sarah Felix, we've kind of borrowed art from Ian Clark, so we've kind of featured a few of the fan artists out there, but all of those people are also doing fanzine covers. I mean, I don't know if Sue's done a fanzine cover. Oh, you did Idea, but you did it 23 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you done a new fanzine cover?
Not for ages.
Yeah, no.
Nobody's
So,
asked.
Claire, that's Claire putting her hand up saying, could you please do a cover for Banana Wings whenever it suits you?
Oh.
I was actually going to pass along a question from Discord for the panel, but
Hello, Discord.
as I've got the microphone, Sue, please feel free to do a cover for Banana Wings whenever it suits you.
Yeah.
If you would like any sort of direction and steer, then something involving bananas and or wings would always go well with us. That possibly sounds as though it too could be a little pornographic, but I'll just rest that thought. Question from online. Kat Templeton asked, she said, they said, I'll just ask this here. This here might have been in that case not a fanzine and might have been the Discord, but I'm going to pass on Kat's question anyway, which, how does a fringe fanzine editor even find fanzine artists, let alone even ask if they'd be willing to contribute? And Dave Langford commented that he finds the asking difficult because his fanzine template has such a teeny tiny art slot. Even D West eventually gave up and told Dave that he'd run out of teeny tiny ideas. But yes, I think Kat's question about how do fanzine editors who'd like to feature fan art go about asking if they don't know the fan artists well, or indeed find where to find fan artists who are doing fan art, if you see what I mean.
May I? I think it's quite similar to soliciting contributors for written material. Unfortunately, one of the ways you get it, if you want to produce a fanzine with work of other people, is there does have to be a little networking involved and a little taking a chance, a little bit of taking a chance to say, would you mind awfully doing a thing for me? And I'll give you an example. Before I actually knew Max, and she was publishing The Cosmic Hairdryer, she did get in touch and say basically that. Would you mind awfully, if it's not too much trouble, doing something for The Cosmic Hairdryer? So what I drew was the interior of the spaceship they discover in the first Alien film, where you have the space jockey sitting in his seat with the giant willy-shaped ray thing there. Only I stripped that out and I put a giant hairdryer in there as well, with going back to a brief and going with the title. So we've got this room that looks like the interior of a rib cage with a weird straight alien, a little spaceman, and a hairdryer. I reiterate, Max and I didn't really know each other. Max had also never seen Alien. So yes, there was. I did find out later there was a moment when she got the artwork. She said, "Jesus Christ, what side of weirdo have I just made contact with?"
And she was correct.
But yeah, yes, ask. People love to be asked to do stuff. It's fun.
Jerry and then Keith.
Okay. Unless one of you wants to say this, I have an answer to Kat's question. Number one, you go on to eFanzines, where Bill both has all the covers from the previous year, and you can find them there, but you can look at different issues in my fanzines, find out who the artists are in the credits, and look at different styles that you like if you don't know these people. It's gotten harder with privacy issues. I now only put email addresses in things, and I offer all my contributors a Toad-Hall email address if they don't want their email address in a publication available on Amazon and freely on these other Fanish sites. But that's what I would do. And that's what I would recommend people who don't know fan artists personally. Go look, see what appeals to your eye, what you think would be good, and and then track down to find out how to ask them. But there is that networking
And
part.
that's how it works in other fan spaces.
Yeah.
You see an artist you like and you commission, not necessarily with money, them to do something for you. You go, I really like your stuff. Could you, you know,
That's the right way to start.
yeah, I really like your stuff. Could you do me this? And they'll go, yeah, 9 times out of 10.
I'm going to give a shout out here for Sarah Felix, who is the nicest woman in the entire world.
That was me.
And
Moose skipping across Austrian Tyrol with Edelweiss.
okay, Sue is the most amenable fan artist in the entire world, which is not quite the same thing. So, so Sarah just doesn't have a wicked bone in her body, which I don't think we would say about Sue, much as we love her. And when she won the Hugo for Best Fan Artist, she said, "Oh, I'd just like to thank all the fanzine editors who are so kind as to use my work." And I was like,
Wow.
"Oh,
Yes. Can I offer a flip side to that? I once drew I mentioned about the experience of being a fan artist on that list down there. And I was once, and I'm sure this chimes with everybody else on this table as well, moved to draw a cartoon of a man in a bow tie with a trophy for the best piece of fan art never to see the light of day because the editor promptly gaffiated, didn't get the joke, changed the layout.
I'm saying now,
We've all
I'm
been-
saying nothing.
But yes, my cartoon of the man dressed as a giant willy being handcuffed to a police officer, explaining he would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for those pesky kids, is out there somewhere.
The oh, okay. My view is, you could say,
It is
on.
I can hear you. Yeah.
let's try now. Oh, that's better. Is it better? Oh, right. Okay. Is that better?
That's better.
Okay,
Fab.
sorry. Yeah, I'm actually speaking, you could say, from the other side of the mirror. I've had a lot to do with fanzines that were nothing to do with science fiction or our fandom, but were effectively in one way or another fanzines. And I had free access, if you like, to well, it wasn't photolitho, but it was some kind of printing. And therefore I could put pictures in. That was easy. What I could put in as art were only cartoons. And the only problem with that being basically there were very few of them that I could get. And I did find one person who could write or could provide cartoons, and he did so, and they would go in. And then I did, in fact, once get the back cover of one of them was a Terry Jeeves cartoon. I don't know what he actually did it for originally, but I wrote to him and said, "Can I use that?" And he said, "Yes, but I want a copy of the magazine." And I wrote back and said, "No, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Terry, you can't. It's restricted." Restricted being purely the top secret,
Right.
confidential, restricted. It was the lowest level, but it was there. So, and that's, I see it as a problem now that with all the modern methods that I was using then, although there was somebody else was paying the money, you can, it's so easy to put a photograph in, and it's so difficult to get the right cartoon or the right illustration that isn't a photograph. That's
And you also have the time thing, it's this is a common thing in comics fandom, is that a writer will literally go, "I want 20 aliens chasing my character." And he writes that in the comic in one sentence, and then Alan Davis spends 4 weeks drawing it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, you can write a joke or a line, a script, and art can take a lot longer to produce it. So sometimes you're hamstrung by schedules.
Well,
you know?
both of the things I'm talking about were 3 monthly publications. So I did have some time, but I quite agree with you. But as I say, the easiest one I found was somebody who could barely draw. You know, I mean, it was just a few odd lines, but it covered what the joke was.
Yeah.
If I'd send him a joke, or if he had
Yeah.
found the joke.
In that
elsewhere.
case, it's good art because it's doing its purpose.
Hmm.
Do you know, it doesn't need to be a good artist. It's good art because it's doing its, you know, it's fulfilling its purpose. And I used to draw a weekly cartoon for our Shadowrun group, and there were 5 of us, and the jokes were for 5 people. And I'd spend hours doing these cartoons of us dressed as vending machines, and I can't remember why. You know what I mean? And things like this. We're trying to get in somewhere, dressed as a vending machine, and I detailed each vending machine to each character. You know, the troll had forms coming out of the top, and I had so much fun with it. But it was for 5 people. Yeah.
So as a microphone holder, I've sort of claimed privilege by sticking my hand up myself. I've wanted to pick up Keith's point about the increasing ease of using photographs. And I'm afraid I'm guilty of that in Inca. I'm an experienced fan editor who should know how to commission drawn art from Spanish friends and colleagues. But I've sort of rather stopped doing it simply because it's quicker to use photos. Now that's stupid. And having a look at Dancing with Architecture with the publication that we've just received, this con, and the way Doug has gone about commissioning art from loads of really good fan artists and got apposite illustrations from people, a lot of whom are here and many more aren't. So it's really made my eyes open and think, I should be doing that again, the way I did in the early days of Inc, or the way I did with Mayer 50, 40, 45 years ago. Get to it, fan heads, and find more artists.
And it's the only way to encourage new ones as well. You know, people see art in your fanzine and go, I've got some art for you. I've got a joke. You know, you know, you've got to see other people doing it. If the fanzine only has clip art and photos in it, it may look gorgeous. You can make them look absolutely beautiful. But it's a bit like, my friend runs charity shops, and she says what you have in the window is what people will bring in as donations. So if you have headless Barbies and open packs of crackers, that's what people will bring in. If you have a Dior dress, they will bring in more designer you know what I mean? And I think it's true with fanzines too. If they've only got clip art and AI, don't get me started, no problem with AI finding cancer. I think that's a fantastic use for it. No problem with it finding stars. Fantastic. You know, there's so many fantastic uses for it. But AI art winds me up, if only because of the amount of energy it uses. Radio Force, one of their programs, did a thing that showed that if you just Google asking I don't know, just Google asking when your local tea shop is open, it will take that much water for Google to give you an answer. If you ask the AI assistant to tell you when that tea shop is open, it will take 16 of these. And that's really important. And that's why it's not trivial, and it's not just about copyright and stealing art. It's about resources as well. You know what I mean? Save it for looking for stars.
I suggest if we want to have that argument, we should have a different panel.
Yes, yeah, I think we're all in agreement. Yeah, sorry, that was
Yeah.
I can claim that I'm also allergic to AI. And
Yes, good man.
Refuse to vote in the fan awards for any artist who used AI, or any fan editor who used any best cover.
Okay, so I'm just going to say, love AI. It's the future. We've got to. There are ways that we're going to make it work. I'm not going to have this argument now, though. So what I want to do, though, is audience. Who did we miss? Who should we have talked about that we didn't? We've got 3 minutes.
Is Steve Jeffrey still in the room? Yeah, well, I think we should have a little shout out to Steve, who's been a stalwart in fanzines for decades. You did tons and tons of stuff for Martin Tudor back when he was in his hyperactive phase, churning out lots of material, and you're actually in the current Banana Wings as well, because I checked. So you're still going, mate. Well done.
Microphone.
So when I started, I admit I was a terrible mimic. I'd pick fanzines up off the fanzines tables at cons. I would look at people's styles and I would desperately try to copy them. So you'll see fake D Wests, you'll see fake Olafs all over the place from those early days. But, you know, that's how you learn.
4 years ago, you did a load of really good stuff for Dangerous Visions that Sandra edited and Pat Bursey and I helped put together as the publication from Call Through Concord. It was damn good stuff, and it was not derivative. It was there were styles I just had not expected from you, and it all was opposite to the.
I just feel like
the
this is now a
source.
conversation between audience members. I don't want to, and Jerry's waiting to have a word.
And then we need to wind up because we're over.
On the other
gonna
side
wind
of the
up.
pond, these are a lot of the old timers, but Dan Steffen has started doing art again, and he's
Well, hey.
utterly brilliant. Jean Gamal is doing art, and she's got her style. And I will do a callback. Ken Fletcher is no longer doing art currently, but I'm hoping to entice him in. But then, you know, there's the whole furry fandom, and the amount of art being done there is, you know, remarkable, and a lot of young people doing that.
I've got one to finish with as well, which is something you can all do for the fan artists. Now, obviously, time passes and we can't deal with that. But do you really need to change that hairstyle, shave off that beard, go on that diet, go to that gym? And I was stood talking to D West, who had just drawn, amongst others, Mark and Claire, as they used to look. Mark with all these big hair, and Claire, a generously proportioned Claire. Mark had cut off all his hair. Claire had been on a diet and had slimmed down massively. And he watched them go by and he just went, oh, shit.
Especially when they cut off their identifiable features, you know what I mean? I mean the only one who hasn't is Greg Pickersgill, who's looked the same for about 50 years. And
We actually canonized him for that.
yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, when he said, is there one thing you can do for fan artists? I was going to go, you could buy us a drink.
Yeah.
Well, by the same token, also, when Rob Jackson came back to fandom, for the first little while until Dee saw what he actually looked like these days, you know, he was still drawing him as he'd been in the 1970s, where his most prominent feature, pardon me for saying this, Rob, was his chin or lack of same, and now bearded Rob was rather a different proposition for Dee to draw.
I've just realised who Rob is in those cartoons.
He also had to add glasses, which were new.
Right, we better
Okay.
wind up as we're running.
Thank you very much, all my panelists. That's Rob Hansen, Dave Hicks, Sue Mason. I'm Alison Scott. There's the bar. See you later.
Thank you.
The speaker while speaking. I'm sorry.